Everyone, welcome to all the learners. We are on this perspectives of management subject. According to this subject, today we are discussing related to the two major concept of management. That is a span of control and as well as the delegation. You know very well management as a group of people working together and achieving their result as per managing all related works. Am I right? So in this process, we have lot of coordinations and different assigning the works to the various peoples in the organization. Am I right? So there are peoples here we can make and confirm there is some superiors and the subordinates. So while superiors and subordinate, we considering there are a lot of relationship with them while discharging of their services and easy making of each and every managerial activities while they have to concluding of their work with good results. Am I right? So in this manner, the topic span of control has played a very good to the workers who are the working and maintaining a good relationship with each and everyone. Am I right? So span of control or span of management or other part of the span of responsibility is comes under as a equal meaning. Let us see what is the basic concept of this span of control. So every person has a limited capacity to effectively supervise and control other person. So no one control an infinite number of subordinates. So the capacity and availability of a person to surprise a large number of subordinates working under him is limited on account of time at his disposal, knowledge, energy, and his personality, interests, and other capabilities. So the number of subordinates working under him must be manageable, and the management must create departments or distinct activities groups, each of has a manager in charge. Am I right? So the span of supervision as the span of control and the span of management are comes to an equal meaning of while like the number of subordinates working with the under as a superior. Am I right? So the span of control coming to the general meaning and as well as definition. So the span of management refers to the problem of how many subordinates can be effectively managed by a manager. Am I right? So one manager, he had maintaining and as well as a relationship of effective completion of works with a lot of subordinates. Am I right? So the span of literally means the space between two as the support of the structure. Example, we can say the span of between two pillars of a bridge. So one is that the superior and another is the subordinates. So subordinates, supervisors, the combination will comes into the span. So the span of like the span between the two pillars should neither to be large nor too small. If it is too large, the bridge may collapse, and if it is too small, it will enhance its cost. So here, when applied management span, subordinates as a manager or supervisor can supervise, manage, or control effectively and efficiently. Am I right? So that the span of supervision, therefore, we refers to the optimum number of subordinates that a manager or supervisor can manage or control effectively. Am I right? So I think you all are coming the basic idea of the span of management. So let us see the first person has introduction of this concept is the General Hamilton. So who was the first person to introduce the concept of span of management or the span of control, and in his famous book like the soul and body of the army. Am I right? So it states that the average human brain finds its effective scope in handling from 3 to 6 are brains. Am I right? Generally, it is also we are looking into every manager related organizations. Am I right? So then here we approach the supreme head of the whole organization, the more we out to work towards a group of the 6 people. See, the another definition came from Peter F. Drucker has said a span of control refers to the limit of number of subordinates reporting directly to a superior. And according to Springle has said, span of control means the number of people reporting directly to an authority. So the principle of span of control implies that no single executive should have more people looking to him for guidance and relationship that he can reasonably be expected to serve. Am I right? So, and we go another definition to easy understand of this span of control is that in the words of Kunz and O'Donnell. So he used this term to represent the limit on the number of persons that an individual can effectively manage in a classical type of organization structure, which is the most common form. The effectiveness and efficiency of the operations are determined by the number of people under the direct supervision of a manager. Am I right? So, and I think you have to easily understand this concept, very easiest concept, and we look at on the basic factors affecting or the factors determining of the span of management. You know, the relationship of this subordinate as well as the supervisor, there are a number of factors will affecting while a calculation of the span. Am I right? So the first one is that qualities and abilities of the manager. Am I right? So the quality and abilities of the managers, here we are look at on that while discharging the services and maintaining the managerial activities to coordination with them as ability of each and every perspective of the work. Am I right? So this factor has closely affected while the relationship of a subordinate with their supervisor. Am I right? Whenever we have a not a good understanding as well as a good maintaining of a relationship with others, that easily knowing of there is a the miss as well as disqualified and they have not the ability to perform that work and that work has not gone between the conversation of the subordinates as well as the supervisor. Am I right? And comes to another one, capacity and the quality of the subordinates. So this is also one factor that affected like determining of this span of management, the capacity and the quality of the subordinates also, because the subordinates here, suppose unsound mind of the subordinates are there, whenever we have to given motivation or we have to taking so many of relationship with him while completion of the work, but the capacity and his willingness, like his qualities is very poor. The span of control also one take a good factor to determine. Am I right? And other one, nature and significance of the work. So here also is a good thing while determining of the good relationship of through a factor of nature and significance of the work. If the work has easily given and notified the span related to the subordinate and the supervisors. Am I right? And another one, degree of the decentralization. Here mostly we observing the span of control is the decentralization organizations only. So the degree of decentralization is such a good factor while determining the span of management. Another one, communication system. So this is a well and good point related to one such a good factor we considering while determining of the span of control. Am I right? Another thing, the levels of the management and physical location. So these 2 points are so very much highlighted while determining the span related to the managers. Am I right? And we going to continue of this topic. So determining of the proper span. How we are determining the span? Am I right? So very often the question is asked as to how many subordinate a supervisor can manage effectively. So, however, this question has been attempted by various management experts, and even they are not unanimous over this point. The idea of limited span developed from experience, although the concept span of control was discussed by Henry Fayal, but Sri Lan Hamilton is usually given credit for the development of this concept. So we can't enable at the time of how many one supervisor can have a span of their subordinates. So luckily there is a person called as a V.A. Graikunas. So V.A. Graikunas is a person has developed and has given one formula to calculation of the span related to the superior and the subordinate. So V.A. Graikunas is published a famous paper in 1933, and he analyzed the subordinate supervisor relationship in terms of a mathematical formula. So the formula was based on the theory that the complexities of management increase geometrically as the number of subordinates increase arithmetically. So that V.A. Graikunas identified three types of subordinate supervisor relationship. Am I right? So these three type of the subordinate and supervisor relationship we have to discuss. The first one is that the direct single relationship arising from the direct and individual interaction of the superior with the subordinate. So this will be as a direct relationship. And other one is that direct group relationship arising between the superior and the subordinate in all possible combinations, such as take the example of A is there and B is there, A to B with and C. Am I right? And C is another manager. So here A is the superior and B, C are the subordinates. So A is the relationship with B and A is the relation with the C and B is the relationship with the A and B also relationship with the C. Am I right? This will be as a direct group relationship and the cross relationship. Am I right? This way, V.A. Graikunas has been taken and identified three basic type of subordinate and supervisor relationship. Am I right? And coming to is a mathematical application. Here we have understand and majorly we are look at on that the Graikunas has given the formula to ascertain the number of subordinates to their superiors relationship. So the number of relationship, the formula is that n into 2 power n by 2 plus n minus 1 like. Am I right? Here n stands for the number of subordinates. Am I right? Hence, some take the example, if number of subordinates working under a superior is 4, the number of relationship he develops is 44 as calculated this mathematical formula. Am I right? So the guy Graikunas was of the opinion that a person can manage 222 relationship arising out of 6 subordinates. Am I right? So 6 subordinates, if at all one superior is handling, he had to get taken off 22 times of relationships with their subordinates. Am I right? Then the L. Urwick, he also point out as a British consultant, however, found that the ideal number of subordinates for all superior authorities to be 4, and the lowest level of organization, the member of maybe 8 to 12. According to Haley, the span at the higher level should not more than 5 subordinates, and at the lower levels it can be 7 to 8. Similarly, J.C. Worthy has suggested a span has higher as 20 to 30 subordinates. Imagine that if really we have a superior and we had a more than 20 to 30 subordinates with our control, and how much of we have to taking off the span with them. Am I right? So generally here is the one table that have to given the number of subordinates like one, that the relationship one, and the subordinates increase two, that goes to six, and if the subordinates goes to seven, that the 490 relationship we have with the seven subordinates. And imagine that if we have 10 subordinates with us, there is a 5,210 relationship I have to maintain with them. Am I right? This is a mathematical formula has given VA Graikunas. Am I right? And coming to continuation of this topic, the advantages, any advantages had for a span of control is the advantage of adequate span of control can be pointed out it increases work efficiency, because the subordinates and the supervisor can make their relationship it had helpful the work efficiency. That's the one good advantageable here, and it facilitates effective supervision and control, because every time superior will have a relationship with the subordinate, so that the facilitated some good supervision system will come into the span of control. Am I right? And it's increased the goodwill also, the increase of the goodwill, and also we said that develops a professional moral and team spirit. We have to given the professional like who was a subordinate, we have to relationship with them while discharging of our managerial related activities. We confirming that is a moral and giving some team spirit also. And one of the major advantage of this span of control is better communication and the coordination. Am I right? So better communication and coordination, and also facilitate quick action. Am I right? So because when we have to approaching the good number of relationship with the subordinates, automatically the work related actions will come spontaneously. Am I right? And less labor absenteeism will come, and as well as develops discipline and mutual trust, and better advantage of this span of control is supervisors can concentrate on important work. Am I right? So supervisors can concentrate on important work also. Here the best advantage of the span of control. Am I right? And we look at on that is the what are the types of this span of control. So the span of control has two types that we'll have to say. One is that the narrow, one is that the wide span of control, the span of control types. One is that wide span of control, and other one is that a narrow span of control. So wide span of control, control means a manager can supervise, a manager can supervise, a manager can supervise and control effectively a large number of persons, a large number of persons at a time, a large number of persons at a time. So it is because a shorter span of control leads to rise a number of types or levels in vertical chain of the command, which leads to the all like a tall related organizations. Here you can remember this word also, tall organization. So which is the tall organization is called as a wide span of control, wide span organization. Whatever in the wide span of control, like it is a large number of persons has working into the organization, that we have said is a tall organization. One like a superior is there is another superior, and the more superiors with them in more supervisor to another supervisor, that will come to the fall in the tall organization. Am I right? So what are the advantages of this wide span of organization? We look at on that it indicates that the chain of command is short because of this communication trends to be quicker and more effective. And also the wide span of control gives the system allows the delegation of authority and develop subordinates. Am I right? So that the subordinates feel free more autonomous and independent in wide span of organizational structure. Am I right? So we also has confirming that this step of advantages to the wide span of control. There are some disadvantages also we mentioned. That is that a flat organization make superior supervisions and control loose and less effective because a single executive may not have enough time and energy to supervise all the subordinates. I mean, so it is not at all suitable for a large manufacturing organization that have developed a business with a narrow span of control. So look at on that what is the narrow span of control. So narrow span of control, here we have to discussing when the work and authority is divided amongst many subordinates and a manager supervise and controls a small group of people, then the narrow span of the control is exist. Am I right? So it adds more layers or levels of the management and so leads to the tall organization. Am I right? So that's the main feature of the narrow span of control, or as a specialization work can be achieved. Work is complex and requires a tight control and supervision. So there are narrow span of control is helpful to the messages can be distorted and coordination is difficult to achieve and communication gaps can come. Moreover, had cost of supervision and no quick response to have the environmental changes. Am I right? So the span of a narrow span refers to the existence of too many levels in the organization. There is some advantages of the span of control. The main advantage of span of a narrow span is that effective leadership and control can be directly exercised on the subordinates. And other one is that the senior can easily communicate and effectively coordinates the efforts of his subordinates since their number of is small. Am I right? That's the narrow span of control. We look at on the span of control flat organizations. Am I right? So it's a flat organization while we have to comparing the wide as a tall related organization. Am I right? And going to continuation, this the span of control management is any had a limitation. Yes, the span of controls has some limitations like existence of too many levels is expensive because of the organization has to be bear the burden. This is one of the limitation of the span of control, and too many levels like the spans complicated the communication between the manager and its subordinates. Am I right? So that omissions and misinterpretations increases with the wide span of controls. Am I right? And other thing, existence of too many levels and numerous departments can create problems even in the planning and the controlling process also. So that a well-defined plan loses the clarity and coordination as it has passed to the lower and lower levels. Am I right? And in a similar way, control becomes difficult with too many managers. So that the handling of superior subordinate relationship on smooth lines is a must for the success of any organization. That the large spans and too many managers may complicate the like a synergized relationship between workers and the managers. So another limitation we have to discuss is that the division of activities among the various departments and the creation of hierarchical levels are not completely desirable, as the departmentation is not an end for achieving effectiveness into the organization. So considering this limitation, we have to go the better to have given a good span of control in the organization. Am I right? With this, we concluding of this span of management or the span of control, and just we want to go another topic like the concept called as a delegation. So delegation also one of the a good concept related to management perspective. So see, the authority is the key to the management job, and manager without authority cases to be a manager in a formal senses. In the same way, authority, the delegation is the key to the organization. Am I right? So the delegation is an administrative process of getting things done by others by giving them responsibility. Am I right? So all important decisions are taken at the top level by board of the directors. Am I right? So this like a board directors can make so many decisions, and they are the authority people, like the chief executive, like executed and assigning the work to the departmental managers who are the delegated the authority to their subordinates. Am I right? I think you are the easily catch up this point. Every superior delegates the authority to subordinate for a particular work done. Am I right? So the process goes to the level where actual work is executed. There is a limited upon to which a person can supervise the subordinate. Am I right? So when the number of subordinates increases beyond its them, he will have to delegate his powers to the others who perform supervisions for him. So he assigns duties and authority to his subordinates and ensure the achievement of desired organizational goals. Am I right? So catching up this delegation topic, just we go the meaning and the definition of this delegation. Am I right? So considering the concept of delegation, the meaning of delegation said delegate and get the things done. This is the essence of modern organization. Am I right? So delegate and get the things done. Am I right? So delegation means to grant or conferring authority from one manager or organization unit to another order to accomplish particular assignments. Suppose I am your professor. I had some work. I had assigning my work. There is a home the participation like you in the students. Just I am assigning my role to one student. So here my delegation, like my authority, is conforming to transfer to one student. Am I right? So like similarly, a manager simply does not delegate authority, he delegates authority to get a certain work accomplishment. Am I right? Here, we had given the work accomplishment authority have to transfer to the subordinate. Am I right? But fully we can't to transfer all our authority to the fellow subordinates. Am I right? So come to a easy way to understanding of the definition of a delegation. So Louis A. Allen has said that delegation is the dynamic of management. It is a process a manager as a manager follows in dividing the work assigned to him so that he performs that particular which only he, because of his unique organizational placement, can perform effectively, and so that he can get others to help him with the water remains. Am I right? And coming to in the words of F.J. Murray, delegation means assigning work to others and gives them authority to do it. This is very easiest and simply definition from F.G. Moore. Am I right? And coming to another definition, E.L.F. Breach has also said that delegation is a process of sharing a few or all of the four elements of the management process. That is a command, planning, coordination, and the control. Am I right? So Breach has goes on this say that he like the delegation is not a question of issuing instructions, but it is a bringing down of the executives responsibility and the transmission of a part or all of it to the other persons. So thus we have to come to the exactly has getting of this delegation as refers to the entrustment of responsibility, authority to another, and the creation of accountability for the performance. So it also refers to confirming authority to the another as well as a subordinate. Am I right? And coming to we'll see there is a 3 points, the major element of delegations. So what exactly we are discussing here is that whenever we have to transfer our authority, like delegation to other people, like our subordinate, there is the 3 elements we can remember in. That first one is that authority, and the second one is the responsibility, and third one is the accountability. Am I right? So, authority, according to Henry Fayol, authority is the right to give orders and the power to exact obedience. Am I right? That's authority may be either expressed or implied, and it may be the power to command or the order. So that the superior grants authority to the subordinate to carry out the assigned task or the duty. So this may include a right to use resources and spend money and engaging the people. And whereas comes to responsibility, in the words of Theo Hyman, so the responsibility is the obligation of the subordinate to perform the duty as required by his superior. Am I right? So the responsibility is executed upwards and authority flows to the downs. Am I right? This is also we are earlier classes we are understanding, while the top to down and down to top, like authority will flow the downwards and the responsibility will have to upwards. Am I right? So who are the authoritative people has discharging their and passing their powers and orders into the down. Am I right? So responsibility cannot exist without sufficient authority. The superior entrusted some responsibility or the duty to a subordinate. That is the element of authority and the responsibility. But here what I am saying that without this authority and responsibility, delegation not at all to complete. Whenever the delegation we have to discharge this to our subordinate, the accountability is very, very important element. So according to this element, like accountability from McFarland, as refers to that, the fact that each person who is given authority must recognize that the executive above him will judge the quality of his performance. Am I right? So it is a logical derivative of the authority, where every subordinate is accountable to his superior for the to him. So imagine that how many of our subordinate they had accountability with their seniors or the supervisors. Am I right? So who is the senior manager and who are the junior managers or the subordinate people? How many of them they have to accountability while they have to completion of their works? Am I right? So every subordinate is accountable to his superior for the task assigned to him. And delegation requires the creation of the accountability, confirming authority and assigning a particular duty or the task fixation. So that last step in the delegation is concerning with the creation and the obligation to carry out duty or responsibility and render an account of the results achieved through the use of delegated authority. Am I right? So that the authority, responsibility, and accountability, we have to confirming the 3 major elements of this delegation concept. Am I right? Coming to why it is needed delegation. Is really needed delegation or important to the delegation concept in the organization? Yes, delegation is essential in modern management practices to accomplishing some effective result. Am I right? So we'll see the limitation of one man's ability and time that's we needed to the delegation. Suppose I am the manager, senior manager. I need to go the head of from another branch. So what I assigned that I need to delegate my authority to my subordinate, like after who is the senior of the subordinates, he may have to discharge the duties like my powers, my authority levels. Whenever I have to turn up and come into my the related time of the office, he had to be the maintaining each and every related to matter. Am I right? So that the specialized and the technological needs and as well as the tendency to diversify and decentralization organization, the delegation is very, very important. Am I right? So when Another important, we have to say that the delegation is increasing the employee motivation. Am I right? So easily the employee motivation has to be that improving here, and managerial development also very easiest we have to notify it into this delegation concept. Am I right? And coming to that, the major the delegation principle. So how the delegation has to be that given to our subordinates. Is there any principles are there, or automatically we have to set that who is our next as a senior in our subordinates, and come you stand like me and act and perform my work, and you have to be that filing all things and completion this managerial activity? No. See, the delegation is not comes like that. The delegation is comes, it's very easy and knowing of some exact process. Am I right? So that is that determination of the results expected. The determination of the results expected. Suppose I am the boss and I had 10 members of the subordinate, and I need to delegated my authority or delegation. When I look at behind that, suitable results will come, then we have to given that delegation to our subordinates. So while planning delegation of authority, first of all the superior has to be like determine the results expected from his subordinate who is to be delegated the authority. That is the basic important of assigning of the our authority or the discharging of delegation. Am I right? And other one is that assignment of duties to the subordinates. So the second step in the process of delegation of authority is assigning requires a proper description of the duties to be assigned to the subordinates. It's not an easy way. Because of that, the assignment of the duties to our subordinates, when we have to go understand the capable and handling position of the subordinates. Am I right? That's why assigning of the duties to the subordinates, while proper description of the duties to be assigned to the subordinates, and authorization for the action. So the third step involves granting permission to take actions like making commitments, use of the resources, and other actions necessary to get the assigned work done. Here is that one of the major step, I think, the authorization for action. See, who has taken the authorization for the action of related to work in our subordinate people? So exactly we said that this use of resources are like making of the commitment and completion of other related work action. Everything should go into proper way, like how we are the completion, that will be as a said this authorization for the action. And coming to creation of obligations are the responsibility. So the last aspects of the delegation process is to create obligation on the part of subordinate for the satisfactory performance of his assignment. So the delegation of authority must be accompanied delegation of responsibility. For any action may subordinate within or outside his authority, he should be made to feel responsible for the same. I mean, that's the creation of the obligation or the responsibility. So generally we said the delegation is very easy, but the delegation is very difficult. Am I right? And see, this is the delegation principles. So there are a lot of principles while discharging of the delegation, like the principle of functional definition, principle of non-delegation of the personalized matter, and principle of delegation by the results expected, and principle of unity of command. And principle of the scholar chain, and principle of parity of authority and responsibility, and principle of absolute responsibility and authority level principle, and also principle of strategic control when we have to apply and passing this delegation in the management. Am I right? And come see another, we will go to conclusion of this topic, the advantages of delegation. So there are more advantages of delegation. The first one, the basis of the organization. So what exactly here we said, the basis of the organization, like the structure of the organization, it has closely we can observing the major the structure and the level of the people. It's a very advantageable, and also it's enable superior to the perform the creative work and the training and the development, and the delegation has a good advantage called as motivation and moral of their subordinates. Am I right? And other one is that specialization through the subordinates, and quick, better, and taking of the better decision making also. Am I right? So that we have to set that the delegation is one of the advantageable to related to the what we exactly said, the basis of the organization, the training and the development, and giving the motivation to them, the people who are the working in that's closely we have said that the motivation of the employee is goes to the delegation and comes to. Whereas any disadvantages is there in the delegation is well, the thinking of the superior and the subordinate and the organizational related, we have three way of the disadvantages in the delegation. In the point of the superior, if a superior is an autocratic, or a person who thinks that delegation will reduce his importance in the organization, he may not delegate the authority. Sometimes this is also we are observing in our modern organization. So the authority people, like the senior, like the supervisor, he can't to give his delegated powers or authority to their subordinates. Am I right? And superior may feel that he can do the job much better himself, and as such may not like delegation. So this is also one such a good point related to the superior side. Another disadvantages comes into the superior while is the delegation is that lack of trust between superiors and the subordinate also limits the scope of the delegation. Here the trust, because the delegation, he without his presence everything will completed as like as so the superior he may not has a good like a scope to their subordinates while discharging of his duties. So that the prior like the point of this superior and also he had feels that subordinates not capable for accepting the responsibility, and he may be senior, he precious and perfect in his every nature, he may not like to take a chance, and so he may perform the job himself. Am I right? And other one is that in the point of the superior, if there is no developed control techniques, a manager will not able to know the like implementing problems, and so as a manager may like to delegate without knowing the consequences. And comes to the disadvantages inside of the point called the subordinate. So they may not authority because of the fear of criticism and unfavorable result. The subordinates will reject the delegated, and as well as if the subordinate feels like that, it is easier to task easier to ask the boss rather than to decide himself about how to deal with the problem. So that's the situations will come. The subordinate may not interested to considering the delegated authority from the superior. Am I right? And the subordinate feels that it is easier to ask the boss, but he had to that something has hidden his problems. He may not like to take up independent responsibility as naturally, and he cannot delegate any major and independent authority from superior. Am I like? And the subordinate may not like to take risk and face embarrassing situation for his fear of the criticism also. So in that position, the delegated like the authority, he can't transfer to their subordinates, and subordinates not willing to catch up with these authorities in the organizations. And if a subordinate has no confidence in facing a particular problem, he may not also accepting the delegation. And also lack of positive incentives for the subordinates. And if the brilliant performance of the worker is not organized or appropriate by the superior, it may discourage the subordinate from accepting the further delegation also. So this much of there is some drawbacks related to superior and as well as the subordinates, and finally comes to if from the point of organizational side, there may be a management philosophy and commitment towards the process of the delegation. So that's much the disadvantage of the delegation, and also some centralized and decentralization in the organization. Like some we confirming that any organization is a centralization. So the centralization, uh, the powers and duties are must be have to discharging in each and every department, but whereas comes to like centralization organization, so central authority is only one single hair person, so no hair to catch up with that authority or the delegated from him. So based on the centralization and decentralization organization, also one of the disadvantages for this delegation, and the poor organizational climate. So this organizational climate and the improper way of structuring of the organization and the people and various like a structural model of the organizations also, it's not an easy way while delegation concept. Am I right? And coming to see the other one that's called as the continuation of measure to make delegation effectively. So how we are more measuring of the effective delegation, so defining the objectives in the clear. So this is one of the important one, whereas a lot of disadvantages just we are discussing from the side of the superior or from the side of the subordinate. So one thing we have to measuring like that, whenever we have to delegating, so definitely we have to clearly we can given the concept related to the objectives of the work. Am I right? So defining the objectives and clearly in terms that's easy to be how to delegate it of authority as well as the responsibility to make a good relationship to the seniors and as well as the subordinates. And the other one is that select proper persons for a delegation and train them. This is also such a good point related to that. If so many of the subordinates we have, but there is no person has a good capability to handling such a good working activities, but the seniors just pick up one good qualities and have the enthusiastic person. If he is a proper person and giving some guidance and training, and we have to encouraging him whenever my options, you will be the boss or you will be the leader, and you have to accomplishment all the activities like how I am the performing. Am I right? Another thing is that whenever effective of this delegation is that motivating subordinates through various incentives. So this is also very important point related to effective delegation. So giving the motivation to the subordinates and the work and taking this charges like this in charge positions, you have a good experience, and you have to receiving lot of various incentives and increasing of the your positions and salaries and everything we can given him as a good motivation, automatically that will delegation goes to very effective. And other thing is that establishing a favorable work climate free from fear and frustration. So this is also one such a good as per our discussion organizational climate point. So whenever there is establishment of favorable working climate like a free from fear, and there is a frustration to their subordinates, eliminating their frustrations, and want they become like as a good taking of the authorities and played that authorities with the respect responsibilities, that's a good way to the delegation in a effective manner. American determining the task to be delegated is the one of the point we have to say the determining the task to be delegated, and we have to determining the task, the end result we must be known, and we want and as well as we have to given the end result related matter, and we want to discuss what is the task of your work and how far you have the completion of each and every work with getting this task. That's goes to a better way of delegation. Another one is that delegate sufficient authority to perform the job. This is also one such a good point related to the authority. We must have to be that given the boundaries of our authority. Am I right? Suppose I am the king. I had a lot. I had a lot of powers. Whenever I need to go other places, I just want to give my powers to the subordinate. So I must definitely have make them the boundaries. What is your work and what type of authority you had, and what is you have to completion of the task, and that too here the remembering that he is just as a king, not he had a full of the king like me, and he had to be notified with his subordinate. Am I right? And provide all possible assistance. Also, one of the such a good point, like the what we say, the better way of the delegation. We must providing all the necessary and assistance to possible to accomplishment of the task or the assigned duties to our subordinates. And without we can't give anything like I am the people, I am the senior and supervisor, and I just have to I just need to go another place on 10 days or the 15 days, just assigning the duty to my subordinate. What else that I want, I had all my racks has closed and locked, and I carry that keys in my bag. What else if the without a proper way of given the assistance as well as given the possible to the subordinate, how far he has completing his duties without going into taking of all the files or the anything. Am I right? And another one is that they establish proper controls and the conduct regular reviews. Also, one such a good way of the controlling and as well as the see that's way of the control of the subordinates and conduct of the regular views that goes to a good relationship of the authority responsibility with the coming of the suitable what we say the accountability from the subordinates. So this way the delegation will have achieving and as well as the effective manner to accomplishment of all related work activities in our organization. Am I right? And adherence to the principles of the delegation and evaluating the final results and checking of the results also one is such a good of one such we can say the better way of measuring the delegation. Am I right? And see this is the end of our class, and we have to summarizing this class, see what we are today discussion, and in this class discussed that the two concepts, these are the span of management and another one is the delegation of authority. So this class has discussed that what is the major important of the span of management and the delegation of authority in related to modern organization, and come to that conclude that an appropriate span of management is to be followed for effective functioning, and it refers to the problem of how many subordinates can be effectively managed by a man. Average. So a manager can effectively managing their subordinates will comes to the calculation of a mathematical formula of a span of control. So the capacity and ability of a person to supervise a large number of subordinates working under him is limited on account of his time at his disposal, like knowledge and energy, his personality, or as well as interest and other capabilities. Am I right? So therefore, the number of subordinates working under him must be manageable, and the management must create various departments or distinct activities groups, each of each of which has a manager in charge. Am I right? And comes to the span of supervision, also we can say a span of control, or the span of management, or the span of responsibility, or the span of authority, and span of directions. And also see, we are to discuss today the delegation concept, and the delegation is essential in modern management practices to accomplishment of effective results. Am I right? So here is the authority is the key to the management job, and manager without authority is to be a manager in the formal sense. So in the same way, authority delegation is the key to organization. Am I right? So these two topics are very, very important related to the management related perspectives and discharging of their activities as well as discharging their services in them.